a literal witch that I'm going to be discussing. And this is always the hilarious thing when these people kind of veer their heads back again. Hillary Clinton, who, believe it or not, I didn't rag on her a lot during her a couple of election cycles. But Hillary Clinton has some things to say about voting. Let's listen to, or rather read what it is she says. In her piece is published by the Democracy Docket. This is what old Hillary Clinton had to say. Since the 2020 election, with its historic turnout, fortified election, lawmakers across the country have introduced nearly 400 bills to make it harder to vote, purging voters from the rolls, making it more difficult to register, cutting back on early and absentee voting, getting rid of the ballot drop boxes, even banning giving out food or water to people waiting in line. A lot of those are based on just talking points about people that she's referring to, obviously the Georgia law, which apparently she didn't read, but you need to understand the people that they're appealing to don't fucking read bills anyway. So you just say, hey, water's banned, and then bam, you're good to go. Also says we need to call these attacks on voting what they are, part of a clear attempt to move away from pluralistic, multiracial democracy. Multiracial democracy and towards white supremacist authoritarianism. It's funny that she'd use that term. I have some things I'm going to say. We need to remain laser focused on what's at stake for democracy and people's lives and refuse to allow Republicans to draw us into piecemeal fights over tactics and technicalities. Voters should have the ability, not just in principle, but in practice, to hold elected officials accountable in the voting booth. We should be doing everything we can to make it easier for eligible voters to cast their ballots. She goes on as also talking about the insurrection by way of the January 6th, which was not an insurrection or the lousiest siege or coup that I've ever seen, considering that nobody was armed, or rather almost none of them were armed. Anyway, I do want to, there's some other stuff that she could say that I know a lot of other people that are going to cover this recent piece are going to dwell on. I'd rather dwell on something else. Voting is not a good thing. Now, I know that's probably going to blow some minds, people, because you guys have been indoctrinated by way of your public education system, and people look at voting as a net positive, just a positive thing altogether. And they look at democracy as just an objectively good thing. But it's not. It's never been. And this is why, obviously when I talk about stuff like this, you see kind of the differences between myself and other people on this subject matter. But what I specifically take issue with is her saying that, okay, well, the basically not allowing people to vote is what she's alluding to. Not even alluding to. She's basically explicitly saying it. Now is obviously it's racist, or not allowing people to vote in a previous capacity or as freely. So any effort to stop that means it equals racism. But particularly, she's saying racism in terms of authoritarianism. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions about democracy, is that somehow it is anti-authoritarianism. That couldn't be anything further from the truth. In fact, it's tyranny by way of the majority. That's exactly what fucking democracy is. Now, what do we replace it with? You don't replace cancers. And I know that would kind of get in the way of how a lot of y'all view the world. I get it. That's the fucking point. I want you to think this system that we have here that allows people to rule over other human, individuals. And so as long as that asshole gets more of a vote than that person, they say it's a representative. I know you get the other people. Well, we're not a democracy. Look, that bridge has already got crossed. Whatever it is, the fact of the matter is that people get to vote for people that then get to vote on other things and bills and whatnots and laws, depending on what branch of government that they are involved in, that basically impacts and violates the private property rights of other people. This idea that democracy equals good is fucking nonsense. But even more nonsense is this moronic idea that democracy is somehow antithetical to authoritarianism. Where the fuck you get that information from? Oh, wait a minute. That side that's saying that has been all in on racism as a tactic. So the only way that they can really define something as bad is if they just up and claim that it's fucking racist. So we don't like that you guys are, let's say, making it more difficult. Whether that's true or not is a different conversation. Making it more difficult to vote. That shit's racist. Therefore, it's bad. And they got nerve to claim you the authoritarian for wanting to do that. You can't be an authoritarian for wanting people to be able to, basically, that's what you get with democracy, is folks deciding on other people's behalf what to do with their private property. That's all this shit is. That's all every election cycle is. It's a bunch of motherfuckers arguing about how to spend other people's money and how to violate, and when it's justified to violate other people's private property rights. That's all fucking it is. That's all it's ever been. That's all democracy has ever been. It's not a good thing. It's only good because you think that it's good and you've been told that it's good. But when you think about the core concept of what it is, you don't look at this was hilarious to me, is that these folks would like to think that, well, like all the bad things that they would, or I would agree that are bad things, they act like democracy had no part in bringing that about. Of course it did. You got the world that you got because of democracy in terms of the things that you don't like. But see, what I've always been an advocate of is first and foremost private property rights. See, if there is to be a government that exists or a state that exists, I'm obviously an anarcho-capitalist. I don't want it to exist at all. But if it did exist, I wouldn't even know the bitch was there. Would be preferable to me. Now, some people would, this is where all the leftists, they come through, and even people on the other side, they'll come through and bring up what about someone that falls on a blade of grass and they have a nuke and they blow you up in the whole block. You know, they do all that for the, like, just really exaggerative sort of, gotcha. We can't advocate what you advocate because someone will fall on a blade of grass and blow up the world or some shit. That's why you can't have non-authoritarianism, because without it, there would be more authoritarianism, which it doesn't have to make sense. It's the Dungeons and Dragons meme. It's magic. I ain't got to explain shit. Is basically how that works. They can tell you why your shit is bad, but any event that, I don't know, the system that they advocate for puts you in $30 trillion worth of debt, perpetual war. And when you talk about government, and a lot of these governments have come about it in a way that it has been in a democratic process, but it's resulted in the deaths of a quarter of a billion people in the last century alone. Well, they don't want to take responsibility for that. The democracy is only responsible for the good stuff. Hillary Clinton is a fucking witch, but we already knew that. I just wanted to speak on and chime in on this moronic idea that somehow having the access to vote is antithetical to authoritarianism. That's horseshit. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.